So today I'd want to raise a question, and it really is just a question. I don't have an answer for this, so I would like to hear what you guys think about it. And it generally falls, and it started off as this question. So as some of you might know, I've been looking to join a Dark Age reenactment group for quite some time now, and hopefully I'll get to do that very soon. I'm finally updating my kit so it's nice and full authentic with linen clothing and everything. So I'll be ready to join hopefully over the summer, and I've started to look for a few groups that I could join up with. But when I do join up, should I fight with the edge or with the point of a sword? Now for this it's quite important you understand what I mean. So when you fight with the edge, that's, this part is the edge, so you would be hacking and cutting. So if you were my opponent and I want to strike you, I would go in and do a nice great big chop at you, and I would just keep hacking and keep chopping until I defeat you or you defeat me or one of us runs away. So that's fighting with the edge. Or you can fight with the tip. The tip, of course, is the pointy bit at the end of the sword. So fighting with the tip of the sword, I would stab at you again and again until, one of the same ends happens. And I was wondering this, and it comes really in the form of how did people fight versus how people should fight. In the various Roman works on warfare, the most familiar to us, or at least the most familiar to me, is De Re Militari on military affairs. And what it talks about is most people, when given a sword, want to fight with the edge. And certainly all the barbarians fight with the edge, but we're Romans and we fight with the tip. Because the tip is more effective, because the stab has a better chance at going through any armor they have. It's a smaller motion, so you can do it in a tightly packed formation. And, you only need to penetrate, I think he said about 2 inches, although Roman inches are slightly smaller than modern inches. Well, I don't know what exactly that equates to. So you only have to penetrate a little bit to get a lethal wound if you aim correctly. And fighting with the tip is better than fighting with the edge. And if you do, HEMA, also known as, Western martial arts, etc., sword fighting with, in sort of a European fashion, you'll read the same thing from the later medieval sources, that, thrusts are really good, hacks aren't quite as good, and you should really start fighting with the tip more, and doing more thrusts and do that sort of stuff. Even though everyone else wants to do slashes. When you pick up a sword, it feels nice to lay about you and start hacking. But, don't do that. Thrusting is better. So just sort of, generally, all of these sources agree that thrusting is better. And if you really want to be a skilled swordsman and fight off waves of enemies, don't slash with your sword, stab with your sword. But they also all tend to agree that everyone slashes with their swords. So, when the Romans, they don't say thrust because thrusting is nice. Thrust because thrusting is nice, don't use the edge of your weapon like everyone else does, like you want to, like you're naturally inclined to. When you're handed a nice, big, solid piece of steel, you want to swing it about, but don't do that. And literary sources, or, I guess other literary sources, agree with that. When you read, for me, I tend to study mostly in Ireland, or not in Ireland, about Ireland, and in, the old Irish epics and stuff, they talk about how they would hack off limbs and, chop through skulls and armor, and, they would hack and slice and cut. They don't mention thrusts, as much at least. But we know, again, thrusting is better. Everyone wants to thrust. And same thing, with the Viking Age. Again, thrusting is really effective. And there was a lot of developments that would make a Viking Age sword different from this more Roman/Dark Age-y type sword that makes the Viking Age sword better at thrusting. But in, the sagas, there's a lot more hacking and slashing than thrusting. Same thing. When we get to the true medieval period, our, sources talk about all these benefits of thrusting, but in, images and, pictures and paintings and all that, the knights are always shown posed ready to strike like this, not posed ready to strike like this. They're really, hacking and cutting and slicing a lot. That's what everyone's doing, and that's what everyone wants to do. But we know again, all of the sources tell us that for those who could afford training, the training said thrust. So that's kind of the point and the question I want to raise. So should, if I'm trying to portray what some random warrior would fight, he would probably fight by hacking, and he'll want to hack a bunch. So if I'm sort of saying as a reenactor, it's not a sport, it's a acting experience, and my character would do a lot more hacking. But if I say in reenactment, I am trying to replicate fighting styles as best I can, then you want to thrust, because that is the better technique most of the time. So that's sort of my question to you. So I would like to know sort of what you do and what your opinion on this is. Should we fight in a manner that's more accurate to how most of the people in the time period would have fought, or should we fight in the manner that's the best form of fighting? And I don't really have an answer to that. Both of these, there's benefits and drawbacks to each of these. If everyone's thrusting, it's not actually a very accurate portrayal of the time period, sort of how everyone wears chainmail armor, because it looks fancy, even though, it probably would have been a minority of the people that had, bright metal armor. Most people would be lucky to have a gambeson or a thick leather jacket. But if everyone starts slashing, then you're not portraying sort of the best way to fight. It's not going to be, a great skill. It's not going to be a great demonstration of skill, because you're missing out the biggest portions of skill, which is knowing how to use the sword in the best way. So I don't have an answer to this, and I'd want to know what everyone else's thoughts are. So thanks for watching, and please leave a comment below about, what you think of this.